Exercise Confidence listeners, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode. Today, I had the opportunity to sit down and chat with Taly Goody. Taly is an attorney, and she talks to us about not only navigating her career as a lawyer, kind of changing from one specialty to another, and the confidence it took for her to believe in herself in that regard, but also her confidence journey throughout her life. Growing up a daughter of immigrants in the United States, and also really finding herself and finding her way to believe in who she wanted to become and execute that by choosing to exercise confidence in herself. So let's dive into our episode with guest Taly Goody on exercise confidence. Hey, Exercise Confidence listeners, thank you so much for joining us today. I have the honor of sitting down with Taly Goody. Taly, thank you for being on the show today.
JR, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor.
Really quick, I am so grateful that I have the opportunity to talk to you because, as my listeners know, I've been sharing a bit of my next steps in my schooling journey. I've applied to law school. I'm currently waiting back to hear, and Taly's been such an inspiration and such a great resource for me, as well as like a mentor, so to speak. So it's really exciting for me to interview her today. So Taly, can you tell the listeners about yourself in about 20 seconds or so?
Sure. So my name is Taly Goody. I am a California licensed attorney. I have been an attorney for almost 6 years, coming this May. I started my own law firm in 2019, and I practice plaintiffs, personal injury, and employment law. And on my spare time, I love to help aspiring lawyers. I put on events for, prospective lawyers and law students, and share some content on the same. So thank you for having me.
Yes, so excited to talk more with you about your journey. And I was so excited when you said yes to being on the show because one of the things that most people do associate with attorneys is confidence, right? That's something that is so intrinsic to sharing like whatever it is that you are doing, whether it's in a courtroom or litigation or contracts, you know? One of the things I think I want to start with is, have you always been a confident individual?
It's a great question, and I have to think about that because I don't think I've always been confident. I think that, as the years have progressed, I've gotten more confident. Like, I think as, in high school, I've always had some insecurities, and then they kind of went into college. And then, I think overall I've been pretty confident, but I think that recently I've gotten a lot more confident, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I say it all the time on the show that confidence is like a muscle, and in order to grow it, you really have to exercise it. So that's where that notion of exercise confidence comes from. Touching on insecurities, if you wouldn't mind sharing, what do you think is the biggest insecurity that you've overcome so far on your confidence journey?
That's a great question. I think believing in myself and kind of believing in what I know. I think my biggest insecurity is doubting myself. And I think that that's been something that holds me back. And it's more so thinking, oh, I don't know this. I bet someone else knows more than I do, and it's always like, why do I always have to rely on what other people think rather than believe in myself? Because I know everything, within me. I know I've done law school. I passed the bar exam. I do a lot of things, and I just have to trust in myself. So I think that that's the biggest thing, is the self-doubt that I'm always working on still to this day.
With tackling self-doubt, have you also felt, especially in your line of work, the need to tackle imposter syndrome?
Yes, and that it kind of, ties together because imposter syndrome is still something that I deal with. It's getting better, and I think that everyone goes through it. They might not recognize it. There's, we go through times where we're learning something new in the legal industry, or, me, when I opened my own law firm, I actually switched practice areas completely.
Oh, wow.
So I felt like at that point I was starting all over again as a baby lawyer. I was like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? And I'm like, am I even like qualified for this? And that's when imposter syndrome kicks in. Like, oh no, I shouldn't be doing this. Like, there are other people better than me that deserve this. I don't deserve this, and I think that that's kind of, it definitely ties together, that self-doubt and imposter syndrome.
Was there like a moment or something that maybe triggered you being able to really work through and overcome that self-doubt that you were facing and battling?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really stemmed when I opened my own law firm. Like, I think before that, it was more so I was relying on people. I was relying on my boss. I was relying on colleagues to do things. But when I opened my own law firm, I'm like, hey, girl, you're the boss. This is it. You got to make your decisions. You got to believe in yourself, or else, you're not going to be running a firm. You have to be the one to show your clients, you have what it takes. You do know, you do have what it takes. And to just be able to provide knowledge and protection to them when they're going through rough times in their life. And so I think at that point I switched, and I was like, I am going to believe in myself. I practiced. I am way more competent than I think, and so that's when it started to switch, and I've noticed it, and I'm happy for it.
What was the catalyst for you opening your own law firm?
Yeah, so I was at a point where, it was at my last job, I was doing art law and I was doing art litigation, and I was doing that for about 4 years up until a point where I felt stagnant. I initially started and I was really excited. I was like, I'm going to get into these art transactions. And I, initially kind of wanted to get into the entertainment law industry. So I thought this would be kind of a good segue, starting from art law, getting in there. But then I realized, I don't know if I want this lifestyle. Like, not only is the art law was interesting, but I saw the entertainment industry, and it wasn't really matching with what I wanted to do necessarily, and what I wanted to align with for my future. So that's where I was like, okay, I think I got to figure out a new job. Either I go start another firm, or why not just branch off and start my own business? I've always wanted to be a business owner, and I feel like I have a lot of leadership skills in me that I just have to take out. I got to show the world that I have them. And so that's when I decided, I was like, I'm doing it. Here we go. I only planned for about a month left, and then I just started. So I didn't spend a whole year or 6 months. I know I was talking to other people, and they're like, oh, I planned for 6 months. And I'm like, oh man, I just kind of got the basics down, and I just went for it,
Well, that's exciting, and it's really inspiring to hear a woman in the legal profession really just diving in head first. I've kind of got the basics, and I'm just gonna go for it. Have you been a person that's always been really decisive, or has indecision plagued you before in your life?
Indecision has definitely plagued me. That's something that I'm really working on right now. So when I go through things on the day-to-day basis, my husband's actually been helping me with it, because he's like, you're indecisive. You just got to make the decision and don't second guess it, because I think that that's kind of what also holds me back. And that ties into the self-doubt part, so it's like, no, I got to just say, this is my final decision. No second guessing. Because then I go through this rabbit hole where I'll think, what if I went that way? And then what if I did this? And then what if it would have led to a better, ending? And that's what I do with a lot of my cases. I'm like, okay, no, it's like, nope, you just got to be strong with your first instinct. Take a minute to analyze it and then move on. That's it. Don't second guess it. So, I think that that's something that I've definitely been challenged with, but I'm working on it. It's getting better.
Now, when it comes to past decisions that you've made, why did you decide to become an attorney?
So I feel like I've never been, those people that knew from the young age that they want to be a lawyer. I was never like that. I was always like, well, what do I want to do? And I was very open-minded, and I kind of wanted to just let it organically happen as I went through college. And so by my last year in college, that's when I had an internship on Capitol Hill. I was working during Obama's administration. He just got inaugurated, and I was working for congressman.
Wow.
So it was super cool. And I initially was thinking, politics was what I wanted to do. And so I started thinking, okay, law school is a good way to go into it. But I took a 1.5 year gap year. And during that gap year, I really made that final decision that law school was for me, because I wasn't doing school. I had time to reflect on myself, to think about what I really want to do. And so at that point, I was like, I want to do law, whether I go into politics or whether I'm helping my clients. I just knew I've always wanted to be someone to either make a difference in, legislation, or just help clients. That was something I've always wanted to do. And initially, I wanted to get into humanitarian aspects. At this point, I'm not, but maybe in the future,
Yeah, of course. I mean, we've seen you already jump once. So who's to say you can't take another leap into a different area of practice?
Yeah.
I'm gonna make a joke now because you are also Persian and so am I, and there's always the joke that you have to be a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer. Did you ever feel that pressure from your family?
You know, my mom was always kind of like, well, you should think about law school. She did kind of like put the idea in my head, but they definitely were not pressuring. They were like, look, do it if you want to do it, but it's going to be a good choice. Like you have other options. If you don't want to be a lawyer, you know, you go to law school and you realize, hey, I don't want to be a lawyer. There's still so many different other career options out there for you, you know? And so I knew that I wanted to get like the legal, analytical style thinking. And I knew that I couldn't go wrong going to law school because that's what you actually gain from law school, you know, like the way of how you should think and analyze like a lawyer. So, yeah.
That's something that I think is like really beautiful and enticing also about the legal profession is that there is so much variety and versatility to having a law degree. So that's super cool. But also having a family that seems so supportive. Did you also have somebody in your family that was like a role model for you or really like inspired you in your own life?
Yeah, so I don't have any lawyers. Like my mom, my dad never were lawyers. They were very just middle class working, hardworking people. And, you know, really they very much inspired me because they showed me, you know, they moved from Iran here to America prior to the revolution and just started from scratch. You know, my mom, my dad didn't really know English, and they're really just making their way and making a life. And that's, to me, very admirable to make such a huge step and start over and, you know, leave your whole life behind you and, you know, start fresh. So to me, they are the ones that have inspired me to work hard and to continue, you know, pursuing education and making sure that I can create a life for myself as well.
Do you feel like you've had like a biggest supporter in your own journey, whether it was a family member or somebody outside of your family?
Yeah, you know, I think my mom and also my husband. So I have to say two people.
Sure.
My mom, of course, ever since the beginning. I met my husband my first day of law school. So that kind of was more so developed a little bit later on, where he was my full supporter. And definitely as I was opening my own law firm, he's been a huge, huge help to me. And I am thankful that I have the support because it could be kind of a challenging ride, you know, when you're on your own figuring things out. So I am thankful for that on both of them.
Earlier when we were first talking, you mentioned something that you did for yourself today, right? You got a nice Peloton workout in. And I think that being able to really put an emphasis on self-care can help people with their self-confidence. And so what is something that you do just for yourself that really helps refuel who you are so you can put your most confident self forward in your work and in your daily life?
Yeah, so I think for me, I really stress the importance of having some kind of routine in the morning. It really helps me when you know, especially on the weekdays. I even love doing it on the weekends just because it gets me into the right mindset. And it's just basically getting up at the same time, around the same time every morning, exercising first thing, because that's what I like doing morning exercises. I know that some people like to do like evening, but for me, it like sets the tone for my day, just kind of getting me into that right mindset to take on the day and be confident. That really ties together, you know? And so, you know, I exercise and I also meditate every day for just 10 minutes. Just right after I finish my exercising, I meditate and then I'm ready to go. I'm like, okay, here we go. I got everything I needed to get into the right mindset, go take a shower and then get to my day, you know? So it's a really nice way for me to start it.
It's funny that you mentioned routines because I would say just recently, like my work schedule has changed and I've been forced to get up a little earlier and be more consistent. So even today on a Saturday, like I was up at 6:30 in the morning, just like, okay, this is it. Like, you know, this is the routine. But it is nice. I think consistency also can help keep anxiety at bay.
Yes.
Taking one more unknown out of the equation. And so I do agree. Do you have a favorite part of your morning routine?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, my exercising, like I have my Peloton bike, so it's like I just love to get a good sweat on and good endorphins, and then I do some a little bit of weight training afterwards. I always like to mix it up. So that's definitely my most favorite part. If I don't work out, I can see the difference in my day. I'm like, I'm like dragging on. I'm like feeling kind of lazy, you know? So it's nice.
Are you someone who's always incorporated fitness in their life, or was that something that came into your life a little later?
So fitness has always been somewhat in my life, but not the consistency of fitness didn't come into my life until after probably like 4 years ago, where I was like consistent. I have to go every day. It's a habit now, kind of thing. Before that, it was like, okay, if I have time during my law school schedule, I'm going to jump into the gym, work out, and then, you know, but there was never a set schedule. And it was more so like I put it as not a priority, and it was like second to everything else. And so I could see what a big difference. And now I look at my life and I'm like, life before fitness, when it became like part of my life, and then life after fitness. And I'm like, what a big change. Like, I can't imagine how it was like before, you know, because it's something it's almost as habitual as like, okay, I'm taking a shower today. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
It's just part of your life. Like, you just do something, move your body, go for a walk. It doesn't have to be something intense, but it could just be something as simple as walking for 30 minutes, you know?
Yeah, so, absolutely.
Yeah.
I 100% agree. I've probably since mid-pandemic, I would say, have gotten more consistent, and I'm fortunate to have stuff here at home to work out with as well. But just doing something for yourself that you know is good for yourself, I think has been such a game changer, and I consistently like try to get on it, like do it, but I'm a big proponent of like, yeah, do that thing for yourself that is going to make you feel good about yourself. Whether, like you said, it's a walk, if you have the equipment at home, workout videos on YouTube, like there's so many. Yeah, so taking that time for yourself is super important. And I know for some people, like fitness can be a really hard battle to like conquer, or something that seems like a mountain that they just have to really like brace through. Have you had any like mountains or hurdles in your own life, metaphorically so to speak, that you've really had to battle through that allowed you to grow?
Hurdles that I went through when I know this might not be that much of a hurdle, but when I failed the bar exam the first time I took it, and that was, for me, it was a really big, I just felt like it was kind of, oh my gosh, the end of the world, and I was like, what am I going to do? I have to study again for 3 to 4 more months and sit through, back then it was a 3-day exam. It's now 2. 3 days, 6 hours. And I was just like, you know, I thought I wasn't good enough. Again, ties back to my self-doubt, you know, comparing myself to other people and seeing that people that passed on the first try and I wasn't there. And so, you know, it really dug into my confidence a little bit, because I felt like I was prepared and I didn't know. And I felt like, why did other people pass and I didn't? You know, like all these things going in your head.
Of course.
But, you know, it definitely made me grow, because looking back, I'm like, I'm kind of glad I went through it second time, because I remember the change between my first time taking it and then my second time. My first time walking in, I was so scared. Like, I couldn't even like eat breakfast. I couldn't do anything. And then my second time walking in, I remember I was walking in, I'm like so excited, and like not so excited, but I was like very confident. Like I was not nervous at all. I was like, this is weird. Then I sit down, and the first essay I open, I started smiling because I was totally prepared. I was like, and I'm like looking around. I'm like, so fun. And I was like, I think I was probably the only person smiling while I was taking the bar exam.
Right.
Like, what is she doing? Is she okay? So, I mean, I just think, like, you know, it's good because it showed me that I do have what it takes to pass, and that it was just not my time, you know? And I think that could apply to a lot more, you know, parts where we go through failure and we get upset thinking, well, why didn't that happen to me? Like, why is it happening to other people? I deserve it. But it's your time when it's your time, you know? It's going to come to you at that time. So it's like, I think that helped me learn to accept things and to trust that things will kind of, you know, flow as they come, and to just believe in myself.
Yeah, I mean, I can attest to, well, obviously not the same in terms of the bar, but my first time taking the LSAT, I was so nervous. I just felt like not that it wasn't so confident, because I was really trying to put myself in that positive mindset. But I could tell, like, I was riddled with anxiety. I was just so nervous, and it reflected in my schoolwork. As much as I was studying, as hard as I was trying and putting time and effort, and then the second time I took it, like, it was exactly kind of like what you said. Like, I was excited. Like, I was like, yes, I hope I get these questions. And then I got analytical reasoning, so logic games first, which was like my bread and butter, and I was like, let's go. I was like, let's do this. I was like, JR is here, she's ready, like, and yeah, it was a sense of excitement going into it. And from there on out, I just knew I had that kind of like endorphin little rush from knowing that I kind of like nailed that first section. And the rest was, that's it. Like, let's take that same belief in ourselves that we had in that first part into the next phase, which I think is something that you can do in life, right? Like, from one phase to another, because we go through so many phases and seasons in life, that being able to kind of carry that energy with you is really important. But you, again, as we both shared, quote unquote failures that we've encountered, do you think that failures are necessary in life?
Yeah, I think so. I think if you never fail, you never get humbled, and you think you're doing everything right. And so you're going to keep going and going, and then there's never a sense where you're feeling challenged. You're just going to be like, there's never a sense where you're feeling discomfort. And I think that discomfort is so important to being able to self-develop yourself and to grow and to see that you have more potential to reach. You haven't reached it yet, and so I think that all of us need to remember that, because sometimes we're feeling so comfortable and we're like, okay, I feel good. I feel like I finally got a grasp on things,
Mm-hmm.
And then something comes in and you're like, well, nope, I was completely wrong, and that's good. It humbles you to know that there's more you need to learn. So I think failure is very important, and I think learning to accept failure is very important too, because there's two different kinds of people. There's one person who's just going to be hard-headed and think that, treat it like a victim mentality when they fail. Like, why did this happen to me? It shouldn't have happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at a failure, you're supposed to look at it as a lesson and be like, this is what it's teaching me, even though I don't want to think about it like that. No matter what, you don't want to blame anything other than yourself or the circumstances. You just want to say, okay, it happened. I'm good. Let's move on. What do I need to learn from this? I think that's the most important thing.
Mm-hmm. There's that, like, I don't know if it's like a saying that other people say, or if it's just something like that I've heard in my family, but it's instead of saying sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, you change it to sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. Because like every quote unquote loss or failure is absolutely a learning experience. And you mentioned discomfort, right? And that there's growth from that. Have you had have you ever had a moment that was really uncomfortable for you in a way that really forced your self-growth?
Yeah, I mean, I think it happens to me on a daily with just like, things that I go through with my cases. And I'm like, oh, shoot, like, I should do this better this time. You know what I mean? And it makes me feel discomforted because I'm a little bit like, oh, wait a second, like, okay, this is what I've learned here. I'm never going to do this again, So I feel like that's a really big play in my practice every day, because that's kind of what helps me learn. And I think not only, applying it to my practice, but just applying it to life in general, whether it's your interactions with people, your interactions with yourself. When you have like negative thoughts come into your brain, you're able to be aware and say, okay, I feel it. It's good, but I'm going to let the feelings go and I'm going to move on and everything's going to be fine. It's all about having that control with, how you feel, what you're doing, and just knowing that like what you're doing is right, but you have to just be, your reactions have to be better. You know what I mean? Versus just like getting angry or getting upset about things, you know?
Oh yeah, totally. It's definitely easy to allow that knee-jerk reaction to take over. And there is a lot to be said about being able to have that self-control when it comes to certain things. Especially, I would say, in relation to confidence, like having self-control over your self-talk. Because it's so easy to just slip into old behaviors, negative patterns. And along the same lines of self-talk, are you somebody that is like an affirmations person at all? Or are you like, is that something that you're into, or is that not really your deal when it comes to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I try to, I do affirmations, but I also, I like to journal. So journaling definitely helps. but I think it's just the most important thing is, like you said, talking to yourself in a positive light, because there's always that voice in your head that's trying to say, you know, okay, you're doing this wrong, or you're not good enough, or, you know, all these negative things. But then you have yourself, the true self, that's telling you everything's okay, you're good, you are strong, you are, you know, beautiful, you are everything, you know, you're smart. And so I think that that's always important, to keep feeding yourself those affirmations and those thoughts.
Was there ever a time in your life when you really had to battle against your own negative self-talk?
You know, yeah, I feel like yeah, definitely. I mean, it happens a lot. Like, I feel like I go through it probably, you know, in every big stage of my life, when I'm going through, whether it's when I was applying to law school, or whether I was, you know, studying for the bar, getting a new job, learning new things on the job. There's always that time where I feel like that voice comes out, and I'm like, no, you sit back, focus on me. And I think that's kind of where my confidence has grown, because I've been aware of how it's changed, how my self-talk has changed since, you know, college, high school, and then going on. It's gotten a lot better. So I think that that's important.
Yeah, and realizing that it is a journey and that, you know, you're always kind of having to be aware of it, making sure that you're reining it back in is something that is super hard to do, but it's super necessary. And with everything that you're sharing with me, I am so appreciative of your transparency and the fact that, you know, you're just honest. Like, so many people I know would not want to be like, yeah, unfortunately, I didn't pass the bar the first time. They'd just be like,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, look, I'm an attorney. I passed it. Like, why do we need to go into the nitty gritty details? But you are really transparent, not just here. Like I said, I follow you on social media. That's kind of how we got connected. And I love the transparency that you share and all of the advice and the resources that you give. Why did you think that was something that was necessary for you to do in that way?
Yeah, you mean like to share on social media and everything?
Yeah, like all the
Things, yeah.
stuff that you do with TikTok and Instagram and sharing your story and giving advice to prospective lawyers and law students.
Yeah, you know, I think it really stems from when I was going through the process. I remember asking people, because like I mentioned, I don't have any lawyers in my family.
Mm-hmm.
So when I need to get information, I'd have to ask like random people, or like Google, you know. And so it's just like everyone is saying, don't go to law school, don't be a lawyer. You
Yeah.
know, all these, like, I think 90% of the people that I would talk to or research, that's what I would hear.
Mm-hmm.
There's not anyone saying do it, you know. And I'm like, well, why? And so there's always just like, I felt like there was so much darkness around it, and there was no one that was ever really providing the light. And I decided, you know what, I have the opportunity to share my experience, to share my knowledge. And so that's why I started sharing. And I think that I want to share things not so it's like I'm bragging about myself. I want it to be so like people can relate. And that's why I share. I failed the bar exam. I did this. I didn't go to a top law school. You know, I'm just being real. You know, you don't have to be like what everyone says, like you got to go to like Harvard to be successful. I mean, like, yeah, that's great, but not everybody has to go to Harvard, or you don't have to get a 180 on your LSAT. Like, we're human. We're not all going to be like that, you know, and it doesn't mean that you're not going to be a successful lawyer, because all of that stuff is just a hurdle you have to pass that random people created. You know, it doesn't mean that that's really what is going to test your ability to be a good lawyer. And so I think that by creating these contents, I'm able to share just more information, more knowledge, and just have people feel like they can relate, and they could feel some comfort and see some light in the process, but also keeping it real. You know, I don't want to just sugarcoat everything, but like, you know, showing what it's like. It's tough, it's challenging, but you can do it, you know? And so that's kind of why I started doing what I'm doing. And I, especially right now during the pandemic, I feel like a lot of, you know, people in your position, or even in high school, college, they don't have people to talk to about it. Like, they're not in school really in person. So these social media outlets are for them. It's their way of learning. And so that's why I want to do that as much as I can and give back.
And it is doing exactly what you wanted to do, like 100%. I remember, as I mentioned earlier in this episode, that after my first LSAT, I was like devastated, and I really didn't understand because it was so far off from where I was scoring in my practice tests. And that very same day, I was trying to distract myself on social media. And I think you posted this one reel that was like a transition, like you sitting in college, like law school, doing your studying, feeling like so overwhelmed, and then transitions to boom, the future, and you are that attorney. You have made it. You have your own practice, and you were like saying, like trust the process, like keep going, like don't be discouraged. And I was like, that was exactly what I needed, because it could have been so easy for me to just be like, well, I did not do as well as I thought I would on the real deal. I guess this isn't for me. I'll throw in the towel now and I won't even try anymore, right?
Yeah.
But having inspiration and mentors, so to speak, such as yourself, has been such a like gold mine. So I know it's not just for me. I know that there are probably countless other students that, whether or not you realize it, you're helping. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Truly, it does. It means the world. And again, I'm going to take a minute to address the listeners here, because you may not realize how your sharing of your own journey can truly help somebody else in their own journey, or how it can inspire somebody else to really believe in themselves. And that's what the community is all about here at Exercise Confidence, is just being transparent, even on days when maybe you don't want to, or you don't feel so great about yourself, because inevitably that story is going to help somebody else become more confident and believe in who they are and what it is that they're trying to achieve. So segueing into that, off of like who you are a woman in law. So how has that been? Have you faced any misogyny or discrimination, or really female specific hurdles that you've had to just barrel through and really try to overcome?
Yeah, I feel like in my last job, it was more so, I worked basically in my smaller firm, but we also worked around like a bigger firm. So like a lot of men were around me. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was like barely any female lawyers. And so every time I'd meet clients or I'd meet somebody else, they would think like, oh, they wouldn't think I'm the attorney. They would think I was the assistant or like a paralegal or something. So it's like I definitely got that gender stereotype very often, mm-hmm. Especially because when I was at the office, I liked to wear dresses sometimes or skirts. And so I think, with what you wear, it's definitely what they, instead of wearing a full suit pants, I mm-hmm. think that makes an impact. But I also tell people that you shouldn't change the way you want to dress just because of that. I think it's so important to stay true to yourself. If you like to wear dresses, if you like to be very feminine in the office, you could still do that. You don't have to wear suit pants and a suit blazer. I mean, you could wear a suit skirt, suit blazer, or just, a dress. And I think I always say, just be you, be authentically you, and don't, change just because you want to look like you're tough in the legal industry. You could still be beautiful and you could still be feminine and still be way successful. And I think it's also mindset. I know there's always going to be men who are going to do this. We can't change them. We can't change our external factors. But I think if we change our mindset and how we look at ourselves, when we go into a room filled with a bunch of men attorneys or, just men colleagues in general, if you just, portray your confidence and just remember that you have a lot to offer, and what a female thinks can be way more beneficial than what the collective men think. We might mm-hmm. have a different perspective to throw in there. So I think it's a lot about what stems from you within, because we could always feel insecure in these situations just because of, the stereotyping, misogyny, all of that. But I think that, I mentioned, I think that it's slowly starting to get better because mm-hmm. We're all people are recognizing that, hey, you got to be more careful about what things you're saying to people. As I'm talking about men, mm-hmm. what they can say to their female colleagues, how they treat them, and things are just not flying as much in the workplace. It just doesn't work as much like what it used to be like. I think it's starting to change a little bit.
Yeah, and one, that is great that is something that's changing, and two, I would say that a big contributing factor that changing is women such as yourself who are bold enough to step into those roles and show up confident in their abilities and who they are regardless of gender, and just to say I am as good an attorney as any other, and I'm here to do what I know how to do, and that's what I'm going to do. So
Yeah,
I think that's
definitely.
great. I appreciate the example that you are and that you set. Have you ever had like any advice that was either given to you from like family, professors, colleagues that has really stuck with you and allowed you to just believe in yourself?
The advice I got is just basically people saying like people are going to show like they know exactly what they're doing, like the fake it till you make it thing.
Mm-hmm.
So half the people you're around don't know what they're doing. So remember that when you're going through things, because I think that was my biggest thing. It's like I'm always like, oh my gosh, everyone around me is just so much smarter, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And so I think that's something to remember, that everyone, especially when you're going into law school, you're going to be coming across people that are going to be like, oh man, I studied, I'm so ready for the test, just to like do a mind game with you, you know.
Right.
Like it's kind of like, and I think that doesn't apply just in school, it applies in real life, because everyone we come across is just learning or just going through things. Nobody really knows everything, you know. So I think that always like kind of brings me back when I'm starting to feel nervous about something or feeling like I'm not, you know, adequate enough. I think I just remember that piece of advice, that people around you, half the people around you don't know what they're doing, or everyone's just faking it, you know.
Totally. And the comparison game, right? Like that is something that I had to actively stop trying to do because one of the studying prep courses that I was using for LSAT, it had like a forum where you could create study groups or you could like try to connect with other people. But when I would see people just, obviously there some people it's genuine and they are so excited about how they did or their scores, and other people you can tell like it's more of a brag area, right? I would have to be like, oh my gosh, I can't stay here. I can't keep looking at this because it's gonna make me crazy. It's already chipping away at my own confidence, and that's not something that I need. I totally get what you mean by that. Have you ever had to actively take hold of your thoughts in that comparison game?
Yeah, I mean, it still happens now, you know. I'm like, oh man, like I'll see something on Instagram, for example, and like social media is a positive, but can also be a negative, you know, because
Yeah.
there's people like you'll start comparing yourself to people and just being like, oh gosh, like this person is doing like so much more than I am, you know, like I'm so behind, or like just feeling like seeing something where whether that person intends anyone to feel like that or not, but you start feeling those kind of ways. And I think we can all relate to that, you know, whether it's some kind of influencer you see or your colleague or a friend, you know, and you see something and you start to feel like, oh, that like feeling of like, I don't know what it is, if it's jealousy or feeling like you're not good enough, but there, it is there. So it's a feeling, and I'm still working on that. So I think that, hey, we all still go through stuff. No one is going to ever really like perfect it. It's all about progress, you know? You just are aware that, hey, why, like, catch yourself feeling like that and just say, oh no, what, this isn't real. We're just going through something, and then put it aside for now, and then you'll, you know, move on. And I think that's the most important part about these kind of situations when you start doubting yourself or feeling like you're comparing yourself, is to catch yourself and be self-aware that you are noticing that you're doing that, and just be able to move past it more like elegantly and like calmly, you know, versus reacting to it in a negative way.
I like how the way you said it, like, hey, catch yourself. It's not real, right? Like, because it's true. It's so easy, and I mean, I think one of the like dumbest things that I felt bad about, quote unquote, so to speak, through social media was obviously this past year with the pandemic, we've seen a lot more highlighting of people in the medical field, which, yes, they are amazing. And this is not in any way directed towards them. This is just how I felt about something I saw. Was a young girl who, like, she graduated undergrad early. I think she was like 20 when she graduated. She graduated medical school at 24, so she was trying to say like, yeah, you can be a doctor and be very young. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm 28 and I barely got my like graduate degree. Or, I'm sorry, I was 27 when I barely got my bachelor's degree. And so it was like such a moment of like potential spiral, and I was like, no, like someone else's achievements don't take away from my own.
Yeah. And I think the most important thing to remember in those situations is think, okay, that's great that she's a doctor at 24, but you look at your life experience and think, well, I'm so happy that I went through what I went through to be who I am today. You know, if I was just automatically a lawyer at 24, I wouldn't have gone through, you know, half the things that made you who you are, your challenges, your struggles, you know, and I think that that's something to always remember that helps me when I'm going through that. Because I'm like, I'll compare myself like, oh man, I didn't go to like this top law school. I don't feel like adequate compared to someone that went to Harvard, you know, but I'm like, no, but I went through what I went through. And my experience has shaped me to be who I am today, you know?
Absolutely. I was very fortunate with my undergrad where I had a city attorney teach a legal course related to my degree. And I had asked him, you know, for reference. We were talking, and he said, you know, I do want to just caution you a bit. I do want you to know that it is a tough journey. It is worth it. You will eventually fall into something that you absolutely love, a practice that you are passionate about, you know. It may change. And don't let anybody try to get in your head. He said, you know, there are going to be people that try to make it a big mind game for 3 years. And he says, but at the end of the day, whatever state you're in this country, you all pass the bar and you're all licensed to practice the same thing where you live or where you pass. So that's it. Someone goes to Harvard, someone goes to Chapman, someone goes to wherever, it doesn't matter. He's like, yes, it's great. Yes, you get different connections, but he's like, what did he allude it to? Oh, he alluded it to like, you know, we all put our pants on one leg at a time. And so I was like, oh, I was grateful for that. Absolutely. And just like you said, you know, it's easy to be like, oh, I didn't go to a top law school. Oh, this or that. But also being able to remind yourself like, well, I'm still a freaking attorney. Like, I think I'm okay.
I still went through 3 days of 6-hour testing each day to pass the same bar exam that someone from Harvard took. You know what I mean? So exactly. It's the same. Yeah.
And in like the hardest state to do it in.
Yeah, California, it's definitely the hardest state. Yeah.
Oh, man. Absolutely. So kudos there.
Thank you.
We'll start wrapping up our time right now, and I will ask you my favorite last question to ask the guests on exercise confidence, and that is if you could offer our listeners one piece of advice to exercise confidence in their own lives every day, what would that advice be?
I think it's really like the theme of what I think every day is to believe in yourself and don't let your self-doubt, you know, take away from what you are, because there's going to be so many times in your life where you're going to be tested, whether it's law school related, whether it's, you know, your job or school, you're going to be tested. And so if you keep feeding yourself self-doubt every day, once you get to those big testing moments, you're not going to be strong enough to get through, and it's going to be hard for you. So just believe in yourself. Don't doubt yourself. And if you do, remember that it's just a feeling and it's going to pass. That's what I always like to say, that our feelings and our emotions are visitors. You just watch them come and then you watch them leave. Whether they stay for 5 minutes, whether they stay for 3 hours or 5 days, remember it's not you. It's just a visitor. And so I think when I start feeling sad or I start feeling self-doubt and I think about that, it really helps me bring things into perspective, because when I think about the times when I'm really happy and where I'm feeling like, you know, no issues, feeling confident. And so I think that that's the most important thing, is to work with your mind, make your mind stronger, because that's going to be the one thing that's going to help you get through all these challenging times in your life.
You just said something that I loved, that, you know, it's just a feeling, it's just visiting, it's just a visitor. Yeah. I had it explained to me another way at a time when I, as you know, you had proofread my personal statement for me, and so after my car accident, I needed to go to therapy, and so at one point I walked in and I sat down and I like started sobbing because my anxiety was so bad I couldn't even talk. And once I kind of like caught my breath and I was ready to start talking to the doctor, she looked at me and, you know, she was like, you're okay? Like, nothing like absolutely extra traumatic just occurred, right? And I'm like, no, it's just like anxiety. And she's like, okay. She's like, well, one thing that you can kind of laugh about is it's just chemical. And I was like, oh, okay, how nice. I'm still going to sit here and cry through the rest of the session.
I love that. That's such a good way to put it. And I've actually seen, I don't know if you've seen a meme where it shows like what a serotonin like molecule looks like or something, and it's smiling, and I always think it's so cute. Yeah. I don't know, these little things about it really, if you just put it into perspective, perspective in that sense.
Yeah.
When you're going through a tough time, it really helps you get through it.
Absolutely.
You know?
I totally
but still
agree.
feel what you have to feel.
Yeah,
100%.
of course.
You know, go through it, feel your emotions, but just remember they're gonna go at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, give it give it the attention that it deserves for the moment, but don't let it be one of those visitors that says it's going to be there for a weekend and stays for a month.
Exactly. Yeah, no, 100%. By the way, have you found out about any of your law schools, or is that something you're still waiting on?
I'm basically still waiting. I've gotten a few responses that are less than exciting, but it's okay. It hasn't been so many. It's only been like just a few. So there's still a few to come. So there's still hope.
Good.
But
awesome.
Taly, I'm just so thankful that you agreed to be on the episode today and to just share your insights with us. I know I say this all the time, but each guest has something unique that they share that I know will connect to the listeners in a unique way. So I'm grateful for everything you shared. I am grateful for your time, and I just can't thank you enough.
Thank you so much, JR, for having me on Exercise Confidence. This has been a real nice conversation, and I love what you're doing. So thank you again for having me.
Oh, well, thank you so much. And I love what you're doing. So right back at you.
Thanks.
Okay, listeners, that is our episode with Taly Goody. I titled it Visitors because I think that was a good theme about the way we can look at some of these emotions or kind of like the things that we go through, these seasons of self-doubt or these moments of insecurity. It's just a visitor. They're not someone staying. It is not permanent. And we can really utilize that and equip that knowledge to be a powerful tool to work through those moments of overcoming those negative feelings that we may be having on our own confidence journey and whatever mountain we are braving to climb. Since I sat down with Taly, I wanted to share an update with you all on my law school journey. Those of you that are following or are invested, I have received an acceptance to a wonderful school that is offering me a 75% tuition covered scholarship in addition to admitting me to their honors program. So none of that would have been possible without me first believing in myself, but second, of course, all of the people who have believed in me along the way, poured into me, mentored me, those who I have allowed to come alongside me on this journey and utilized as resources for what I want to achieve too, and the fact that they were so willing to do so. So I hope this can really truly serve as a tangible example of how self-confidence and believing in yourself can take you to where it is that you want to go, can forge that path for yourself that you are trying to journey down. And make sure you invite the people along that are worth coming along on that journey with you, whether it's a mentor, family member, friends. Being able to set those boundaries on people who are trying to deter you from your goals or are negatively impacting you is always difficult, but it's necessary. Just as necessary as making sure you surround yourself with the right people that are going to cultivate that confidence within you to believe in yourself on that journey or whatever goal you're trying to achieve. Tune in next week as I sit down with Austin Logus. Austin is a high school physics teacher as well as a baseball coach. He shares his story of how he thought he used to be confident, but in hindsight realized it was kind of just cockiness. And how after some humbling experiences, he has intentionally been working to build up true self-confidence and a good foundation for the man that he is creating himself to be. Signing off for today, I am JR Nasari, and I truly hope that you find a way to exercise confidence every day.